Why most people stay broke even when they earn more. Imagine getting a pay rise every year for a decade. A better job, a bigger salary, more zeros on the payslip. And yet, 10 years later, you check your bank account, and somehow, you're no further ahead than you were the day you started. No meaningful savings, no investments, just a slightly more expensive version of the life you were already living. 78% of workers live paycheck to paycheck at some point, even six-figure earners. It sounds impossible, but it's one of the most common financial traps in the modern world. And it has a name: lifestyle inflation. Today, we're going to break down exactly what it is, why it happens, and, most importantly, how the people who actually build wealth think and behave differently. Lifestyle inflation, sometimes called lifestyle creep, is the phenomenon where your spending rises in lockstep with your income. You earn more, you spend more, and the gap between the two, the gap where wealth is actually created, stays exactly the same. It starts innocently enough. You get a promotion. Suddenly, the car you drive feels a little embarrassing. You upgrade. You move to a nicer suburb. Your wardrobe needs updating to match your new office. You eat at better restaurants because you work hard and you deserve it. Each individual decision is completely rational. The problem is what happens in aggregate. Every raise, every bonus, every windfall, instead of being saved or invested, is immediately absorbed by a new, higher standard of living. Psychologists call this the hedonic treadmill. Human beings are remarkably bad at sustaining happiness from material improvements. The new car is exciting for about 3 months. Then it's just your car. The new apartment is thrilling until it becomes simply where you live. So you need the next thing. And the next. There's a social dimension to this too. Economist Thorstein Veblen coined the phrase conspicuous consumption back in 1899, the idea that we buy things not just for their utility, but to signal our status to others. We compare. We keep up. And the benchmark keeps moving. The data is stark. In Australia, the average household savings rate has yo-yoed dramatically over the decades. But the long-term trend is that people earning significantly more than their parents are not meaningfully wealthier at the same age. In the US, studies consistently show that people earning over $100,000 a year are among the fastest-growing segments of people reporting financial stress. A higher income doesn't make you wealthy. A higher income just gives you the opportunity to be broke at a higher level. Here's the core insight. Wealth isn't what you earn. Wealth is what you keep. And between earning and keeping sits a gap that lifestyle inflation is designed, by our own psychology and by an entire consumer economy, to fill. Let's draw a distinction that our culture almost never makes clearly: the difference between income and wealth. Income is a flow. It's what comes in. Wealth is a stock. It's what stays. A plumber earning $80,000 a year who saves $20,000 of it is building more wealth than a lawyer earning $300,000 who spends $310,000. The income looks completely different. The financial outcome is worse. In 1996, researchers Thomas Stanley and William Danko published The Millionaire Next Door, one of the most important studies ever done on how wealthy people actually live. Their findings were counterintuitive to the point of being shocking. The majority of millionaires in America didn't live in mansions. They lived in average neighborhoods. They drove ordinary cars, often secondhand. They wore unremarkable clothes. Their neighbors frequently had no idea they were wealthy. Because wealth, by definition, is what you don't spend. Meanwhile, the people who looked rich, the ones in the big houses with the least luxury cars and the designer labels, were in many cases deeply in debt, one redundancy away from financial crisis. They had high income. They had almost no wealth. This matters because of how wealth actually builds. Compound growth, the process where returns generate their own returns, is one of the most powerful forces in personal finance. But it requires time, and it requires capital that isn't being spent. A person who invests $500 a month from age 25 will, historically, retire with significantly more money than someone who invests $1,500 a month starting at 45. The income might have been identical. The outcome isn't even close. Wealth is built in the gap between what you earn and what you spend. The size of your income is far less important than the size of that gap. The insidious thing about lifestyle inflation is that it doesn't just cost you money in the present. It costs you options in the future. Every dollar absorbed by a higher lifestyle standard is a dollar that isn't compounding. It isn't buying you freedom. It's buying you stuff, which, as we've established, stops making you happy after about 3 months anyway. So what do people who actually build wealth do differently? It's tempting to think the answer is discipline or willpower, gritting your teeth and saying no to nice things. But that's not really it. The difference is more fundamental. It's a difference in how they think about money itself. Wealthy people, broadly speaking, Think in terms of assets and liabilities. An asset is something that puts money into your pocket, a share, a rental property, a business, even a high-yield savings account. A liability is something that takes money out, a car loan, a credit card balance, a mortgage on a home you're over-leveraged on. The goal, always, is to grow the asset column and keep the liability column as small as possible. Robert Kiyosaki framed it this way in Rich Dad, Poor Dad. The middle class buys liabilities and calls them assets. They buy a new car and tell themselves it's an investment. They take on a bigger mortgage than they need because property always goes up. Meanwhile, the genuinely wealthy are asking a different question every time they consider a purchase. Does this make me richer, or does it just look like it does? Warren Buffett still lives in the house he bought in 1958 for $31,500. Not because he can't afford better, his net worth is in the hundreds of billions, but because he has internalized something most people haven't. Spending money on things that don't generate returns is just a different form of losing it. The practical behavior that follows from this thinking is what financial planners call paying yourself first. Rather than spending what you earn and saving whatever's left, which for most people is nothing, you automatically direct a fixed percentage of every paycheck into savings or investments before you can touch it. You make the saving non-negotiable and adjust your lifestyle to whatever remains. The compounding effect of this single habit, maintained over decades, is staggering. Someone who consistently saves and invests 20% of a moderate income will, over a 30-year career, almost certainly accumulate more wealth than someone who earns twice as much but saves nothing. The gap isn't really about income. It's about the habit. Wealthy people tend to think about money in terms of freedom rather than status. The goal isn't to look successful. The goal is to be free, to have options, to not be dependent on a single employer or a single income stream, to be able to choose how you spend your time. That shift, from money as a signal to money as a tool, changes everything about how you make decisions with it. The goal isn't to look rich. The goal is to be free. These two things often require completely opposite financial behaviors. So back to where we started. The pay rise every year for 10 years. The same financial position at the end of it. This isn't a story about bad luck. It isn't a story about not earning enough. It's a story about the gap. The gap between income and spending. The gap between looking wealthy and being wealthy. The gap between lifestyle and freedom. The antidote to lifestyle inflation isn't deprivation. You don't need to eat rice and beans and never enjoy yourself. The antidote is intentionality. Deciding in advance what your money is for. Choosing to let your lifestyle grow more slowly than your income. And directing the difference toward assets that will eventually buy your time back. Every pay rise is a choice point. You can let lifestyle absorb it and stay exactly where you are. Or you can direct even a fraction of it toward your future self. The people who do the latter aren't more talented or more disciplined. They've just understood something earlier, that the real point of money isn't what it buys. It's what it eventually frees you from. If this resonated with you, look up concepts like the savings rate paradox, the latte factor debate, and financial independence. There's a whole world of thinking on this. And the most important thing isn't which specific strategy you choose. It's that you choose one. We'll see you in the next one.